Do you ever get the feeling that you said you're going to do something, but for whatever reason, you can't really remember what it was?
I mean, it's hard to explain. I'll get to that when I have my review of the game, which I actually will be doing.
When did I say that? Oh, shit.
Hey, remember that time I said I was going to do a review of Little Planet Karting? Yeah, me neither. But evidently I did say it. Yes, I'm clearly on man of continuity, but hell, I can at least keep my word. Even if I happen to do the thing I promised to do 8 months later. So, Little Planet Karting. What is there to say about this game? Well, quite a lot unexpectedly. First of all, I feel obligated to point out, while the Team Media Molecule owned the rights to the character Sackboy and all Little Planet titles, they surprisingly took a back seat regarding the development of this game. Yep, decidedly, it was actually United Front Games that directed the development cycle of this game. So what exactly does this mean in regards to the game itself? Well, as you might know, United Front Games were the guys behind Mod Nation Racers, which was released in mid-2010. Mod Nation Racers was often compared to Little Planet due to the fact both games had very similar premise. Both games allowed you to collect items and objects via the campaign to later use in their respective editor. Once you had created a track, or a level in Little Planet's preference, you could then upload your creations for the whole internet to adore. Or hate if you made absolute shit like me. So with this in mind, United Front's prior experience with the kart racers will probably prove them to be the best candidates for the job, right? Wrong! But here, let me validate my reasoning. I mean, after all, that is my job as a reviewer, right? To give reasoning behind my accusations. Right, IGN? Being as it is a Little Planet title, how similar is it to the other installments? Well, aesthetically, it is right on par with Little Planet 1 and 2. Hell, you could even argue the visuals surpass that of Media Molecule games. Colors are vibrant, and there is definitely a lot of contrast used in the palettes and the levels. While everything is easily identifiable, colors can occasionally come off as dull. I always get the impression the colors could be a bit brighter than they currently are. I mean, not to sound Japanese or anything. Every race in the main story is very memorable, giving a very distinctive feeling for each and every one. And not only are they ingeniously crafted, but they are also just downright gorgeous. United Front certainly did their homework, as nearly every level is a homage to a level or theme in the original 2 Little Planet games, certainly paying respects to Media Molecule or any fan of LVP. Personally, I think one of the best parts of the game is evidently the story levels. Just observing how United Front would take snippets and translate into a 3-dimensional world is just a major allure in its own right. Even prior to entering a race, you truly do get the atmosphere of an LVP title. The menu interface is nearly identical to the Media Molecule titles. You might be thinking, well duh, right? It is, after all, a Little Planet title. Well, no. To be quite honest, the core game itself is more closely related to that of Mod Nation.
Hey, but you said the levels in the
interface.
Yeah, that word. You said it was just like the Little Big Boy games.
Yes, I did say that, and no, I do not take it back.
That doesn't make any sense. I don't even...
You see, from a presentation standpoint, the game is very similar to LVP, but as far as gameplay goes, it's nearly identical to Mod Nation. The controls feel very slippery, as to say there doesn't seem to be any traction between the wheels and the surface, or at least there's less than there should be. I'm not exactly sure how to describe the controls in the best terms, but if I had to use one word to define them, it would definitely be loose. Not loose as in it feels as if the karts have rear wheel steering, but loose as in the controls don't feel very responsive. Nonetheless, the controls and the overall flow of the racing mechanics, despite them being somewhat unresponsive, feel reasonably solid. But how's the online community and all the features included to appease it? If you're familiar with prior Little Planet titles, you undoubtedly know the editor and the ever-growing community are definitive features of LVP titles. So how does karting hold up? Short answer? Well, kinda bad. But here, let me clarify my disposition. First off, the editor present here is painstakingly similar to Mod Nation's editor, and that's not a good thing. Yeah, whatever, SilokHawk.
Haha, good one!
Everyone knows Mod Nation had a super fabulous editor. Yes, I'm aware the editor incorporated in Mod Nation was straightforward and fairly powerful in terms of what you could execute. And if they were to keep it one-to-one of how it was in Mod Nation, while disappointing, none of my main gripes with the editor would be relevant. So what exactly is wrong with the editor here then? They attempted to conjoin the editor from Little Planet and the editor from Mod Nation into a single standalone editor. Why? Okay, United Front, I'm aware you made Mod Nation and all, but that doesn't mean you have the rights to take your prior editor and slap Little Planet functions all over it. The editor is a mess. I mean, I love editors of just about any game, but this one is just so strict. Mod Nation was somewhat strict, but it was forgivable due to the fact how simplistic the editor was. Little Big Planet's editor, while fairly complicated, wasn't strict at all, and anything you'd want to create was completely vanilla. What we get in Little Big Planet Karting is a combination of the two, and we essentially get the worst of both worlds. For example, laying down a track is despicably easy, and consumes nearly no time, but filling your track with aesthetic objects and scenery is outrageously tedious and belated. Nothing is consistent with this editor, and evidently this happens to be the editor's major setback. It's not even consistent with the titles it's trying to emulate. Like in the prior Little Big Planet titles, wasn't it nice how if you merge material into another material, it would become an individual object? Well, for whatever reason, that was overlooked. You can drive a material so far into the other material, it will need to get a goddamn prostate exam. But it's not gonna matter. Once a material or object is placed, it will not have any weight or any form of existence regarding how it will act within the level. Meaning you could theoretically pull the freaking Titanic through Mount St. Helens and it won't have any result whatsoever. But while the editor is undoubtedly sloppy and obtruse, it surprisingly grants a lot of power to the creator. Perhaps even more than Little Planet 2. The majority of the tools present here are not straightforward whatsoever, and the tutorials certainly don't abide either. Nonetheless, given the assumption that you have a good grasp of everything the Little Big Planet Karting editor provides, you can without a doubt make some outstanding creations. Essentially, Little Big Planet Karting is a 3-dimensional games, as Little Big Planet 2 was a 2-dimensional games. Just as you could create 2D game genres in Little Big Planet 2, what was principally a platformer, Little Big Planet Karting gives you the tools to produce third and first person games. This would be a huge redeeming factor of Little Planet Karting, but unfortunately the community is virtually absent. There's definitely proof outstanding content can be achieved through the use of the editor, but it's fairly rare to come across when loafing around the community. User base just doesn't seem to be as fleshed out as prior Little Planet titles, or even Mod Nation for that matter. Perhaps it's due to the fact the editor is too obscure, or maybe it's just because the game's sales weren't all too great. But regardless of the reason, the community just isn't as expansive as it was in Medium Molecule titles. Of course, how non-existent the community appears to be isn't United Front's prerogative, nor is it their fault. Fortunately for Little Planet Karting, the outstanding story levels certainly make up for the vague user base. To Little Planet Karting's credit, it's a fairly solid game. Racing is enjoyable and addictive, drifting around corners feels fast and consistent, and using items both offensively and defensively is very satisfying. The story levels are well designed, incorporating shortcuts and interactive objects. And while racing for the various locals, it is very apparent a lot of consideration went into the design of nearly every race. The game, despite being a somewhat obvious cash-in on behalf of the United Front, is surprisingly good, but its faults, while minor, are ultimately glaring and numerous. I honestly get the impression that the game could be so much greater if United Front would have just taken the time to fix a few quirks regarding the editor and the at times unresponsive controls. You could almost compare the game to a table you'd make in shop class. You just measured all the legs and made sure the table is perfectly symmetrical and parallel on all sides. Of course, it's not a perfect table just yet. The wood is a bit rough and rather chipped. It's only one sanding away from being a superb table, and evidently the little time you'll take to sand the surface will make all the difference. So is the case with United Front's Little Planet Karting. They are one sanding away from having an outstanding game. However, they didn't take the time to do that additional refinement. And the result is a game that just doesn't have the suitable amount of polish. But despite all the gripes I hold against Little Planet Karting, it's hard to complain about a game that's subsequently simplistic and entertaining. And granted you could grab a few friends to play with, it's definitely worth trying out. While not a perfect game, or even a good game to hold up the standard the original Little Planet set, it's definitely a blast to play with friends. The racing mechanics are solid and enjoyable, and although the game might be a bit of a letdown for Little Planet fans, it definitely has a lot going for it. A beautifully crafted campaign, a powerful editor, and an undeniably lively multiplayer experience. Little Planet Karting receives a 3.6 out of 5 with the label of solid.